2 spots, 3 teams, all carrying the hopes of an entire region on their shoulders. Going into the last day, G2 Esports, Evil Geniuses, and PSG Talon are neck and neck in the fight behind RNG and T1. And assuming that T1 get at least 1 win today, only 2 of them will make it out. But how do we get here? Well, it all started like many dramas do, with a collapse. G2 went from 4-0 to 0-4 in what felt like the blink of an eye. And now the EU Titans are finding themselves in danger of not even making the knockout stage. The 2019 MSI champions are feeling the pressure, but although morale might be low, their schedule brings hope to LEC fans. A win versus Saigon Buffalo will already bring them a long way. And later today, they face EG in the classic NA versus EU rivalry matchup to solidify their spot. The LCS champions pulled off an impressive win versus T1 yesterday and still hold their fate in their own hands. Impact has been playing like a man possessed and looks to lead the young guns of EG to the knockout stage like he did with Team Liquid in their famous run back in 2019. But NA fans will still hold their breath on this last day of the Rumble stage, as last year we saw PSG Talon crush Cloud9's hopes of making the knockout stage. And today, they could do it once again. The PCS champions lost 2 of their star players before the season, but with their wins over G2, they have managed to keep their dream of back-to-back MSI semifinals alive. They have a tall task ahead of them. Their matchup versus Evil Geniuses will be monumental, but a win there might not be enough. Later in the day, they face the best performing team at MSI in RNG, which could be a do-or-die battle for them. There you have it. The script's been thrown out the window, the stage is set, and everything is left to be decided here on our last day of the Rumble stage. Let the action begin.
Ready to fire, ready or not, we letting it go on.
There's nothing you can do. RNG are your nightmare.
Set it off like this, set it off like, set it off like this. Burn it up.
Welcome back to MSI 2022 in Busan, South Korea. Here we'll get a look at G2 arriving to the arena before their crucial game versus Saigon Buffalo, who we'll see for the last time today at MSI. Let's see if they can go out with a bang. I'm Dash, and I'm happy to be joined by Chronicler and Emily for what could be a marathon final day of the Rumble stage. We're up early, but we've got plenty of energy coursing through our veins. How you doing, Chronicler?
Very awake, very energetic,
the
not
delay there
tired
makes me
at
feel
all.
otherwise.
I want 3 tiebreakers. I want to go for the full day. I'm really excited. We don't always get the pleasure of having a Rumble stage where everything is still up in the air until the final day, so wouldn't have it any other way.
That's a very good point. Now, yesterday, the early Rumble overreactions were thrown right out the window with multiple upsets and a big shakeup in the standings.
No, we must decide everything on best of ones. Honestly, I'm surprised I haven't been kicked off broadcast for how much I dislike best of ones. But yeah, I mean, like we went into yesterday, me and Dan on Analyst Desk being like, oh man, like we hope things don't just kind of play out as expected, and they didn't. The entire day was massively entertaining. We saw people, changing their strategies, switching up styles, a really interesting team composition. So I was very pleased.
All right, well, let's start with the biggest shocker of yesterday. It was Evil Geniuses managing to take down T1 and making, again, these standings and that race for the top 4 very interesting.
I thought it was great. You know, it
So did
helped.
I.
It helped. Yeah, I mean, I can understand it from your perspective, but I've been very outspoken throughout the tournament that EG had such a nice growth curve even within. We saw them develop, we saw them learn, and their win over T1 really felt like a solidification of the work that they have put in. And also T1 won against G2, so my mood wasn't too rude on the day.
I think I really love this EG team, and when we think, again, about them domestically, it was a lot of ramping up, right? They were very inconsistent, and then going into playoffs, that's where we saw, like, the significantly better drafting, in my opinion, like, really strong preparation against their opponents. I love the default to, like, okay, you know what? Jinx. We're doing a dive, like 5v5 comp. Impact on Gangplank with those barrels. One thing that's really interesting about T1's reaction is in that owner interview afterwards, he was kind of like, thanks, EG, because you took the pressure off of us. And then the next game, we saw Kuma lock in Aphelios, and suddenly they look a lot more like what they did in LCK domestically. So that was a really interesting thing to happen after that upset victory.
It's a super valid point. We kind of saw it happen in both ways, right? It was EG unlocking themselves to go back to what had worked in the past. They find the victory, and it looks like it kind of did the same thing for T1 in the loss. Of course, we do have to reflect on the fact that RNG has separated themselves from the pack, the only team locked into the knockout stage as of yet at 7-1, but they look like the clear top team at the moment.
From a non-LPL perspective, because I know Emily, and I've talked a lot to Ox, I talked a lot to Dagda and Lyric, and they're a little bit more skeptical. From a non-LPL fan point of view, RNG have been super fun to watch. I think the way that Xiaohu, and loving that we see some Galio clips here, because the way that he has been able to impact the map in basically all of their victories, which is, again, a lot, has been really, really cool to watch. And then Gala can just blind pick Kai'Sa every single game.
It's Gala's
again.
meta.
As we see Gala just solo kill Danny, kind of unfortunate there. Gala, I know Dan went on his rant yesterday about how much he loves Gala. He's obviously been performing really well. I think this is a really great meta for him, right? And the big thing that I like about him, as opposed to last year where we were really seeing him come into his own, now he is, I think, a lot more well-rounded of a player. He's a lot more responsive in terms of what RNG want to do, and they can kind of just point him in a direction and he can pop off in team fights. His lane partner, Ming, because I feel like supports don't, like, AD carries get all the credit, you know? And I'm saying this is an AD carry main. I think Ming has also been having a really good tournament as well.
Gala, best player at the tournament so far?
I'd say it's between him and Zeus for most consistent overall, yeah. Obviously, after the first 3 days, a lot of people, me included, would lean towards Caps, but with what has transpired, I'd say Gala, yeah. And or Zeus.
All right, fair enough, fair enough. We'll have more Gala in today's countdown because after 4 days of action, it's high time for the 2022 MSI Rumble Awards live from the Berlin studio. The red carpet has been laid out in honor of our excited nominees while our expert panel is ready to cast their votes and decide who gets to go home with the prestigious trophy. Our first category is for Sleeper Agent, those who started slow but then woke up as the Rumble stage developed. Let's take a look at our nominees, shall we? First up, we have Saigon Buffalo's Froggy for his outstanding Day 4 performance, followed, of course, by PSG's Bay for finding his style after some days of searching. Gotta wake up just in time for that one right there. And then we will close things out with RNG's Ways Volibear, who was hibernating for a very long time, but woke up in time for some T1 dinner.
It's not the Volibear. The bear should go back to sleep because RNG have been really looking really good at anything that isn't Way Volibear. So I'm going to go for Bay. I think he's had a very long gestational period and slowly he's blossomed in this beautiful player that gets Lysandra, starts every team fight off beautifully, and is not a huge detriment to his team.
He just want to talk about Bay because it's a bridge to talking about LCK challengers. I'm going to go with Froggy.
Okay, tell me why.
Who I think we saw from Froggy yesterday, what we saw from him domestically, right? Where if you get him out of lane, if you do actually, kind of help him through the laning phase because he isn't as strong of a laner, he is a phenomenal team fighter. He popped off on Ahri yesterday, and that was really cool to see.
Well, a split panel here. Let's take a look at who picks up the honors, though. Congratulations to Saigon Buffalo's Froggy, who after a short power nap had an amazing Day 4 performance and led his team to their first win of the MSI Rumble stage. Our next category, though, is an oldie but a goodie for Best Grandpa. And of course, we're going to start with the boomer himself, EG's impact for being a leader on a young team. Next, though, might be a surprise for some, where we have Danny for embodying complete grandpa energy. When the kids are having fun in lane, you will find him asleep, but he'll wake up just in time for dinner. And of course, finally, we've got G2's Yankos for his grandpa noises, I say in air quotes, in G2's voice comms. I absolutely love that's what they decided it was, grandpa noises.
I just want to know, it's like, oh, like, is it like a stretch?
Falling
is it
asleep in the middle of the, yeah, exactly. A little bit of a grunt.
What do we think?
Yelling at the Zoomers.
Just like I'd say a grunt. Yeah, like I got to get out of bed for this.
So who takes your top honors?
I mean, for me, it has to be Impact there was an interview earlier this year with him where he's being interviewed and they're like, oh, how does it feel to be the veteran leader? And he's like, oh, I don't feel that old. Like 2 seconds later, the guys are making too much noise. He just turns around and yells at them to shut up. It was amazing.
I remember that. That was a remote interview still, exactly.
I got it with Danny. It's easy to have grandpa energy when you're old, but it takes dedication, hard work to have that energy when you're one of the youngest players.
I like that logic there,
Yeah,
right?
that's
You
a
have to work
swap.
harder to get to grandpa
gotta
energy
reward that.
as a Zoomer. All right, well, let's see where the votes have gone. Congratulations to EG's grandpa in the top lane. It's none other than Impact. It's not easy keeping the Zoomers in line, but thanks to this veteran, they're on their way towards the MSI knockout stage.
Hopefully, that's a curse, actually.
Let me go to the world,
I
Zoomers.
wanted them to change that copy. You could have just cursed EG.
I don't take any responsibility for that. I just read what's in the prompter. Now for our final category, and this one's for the kids. It's the Best Zoomer Award. We've got 5 to choose from in this one. What's your feeling when you look at this field?
Already mentioned, in my opinion, one of the best performing players at the tournament. His international debut called for him all of last year, vindicated, incredible performances on so many different champions, especially with getting very little resources at the start of the split or at the start of the tournament as well. It's got to be Zeus.
So I want to shout out Owner, who had a phenomenal interview yesterday. He is so entertaining. I was so happy that we got to see that side from him because this T1 team is actually like very bubbly, like very goofy. They're such a fun team. He's improved so much from last year. So shout out for having that hilarious and incredibly confident interview.
Yet another split decision. It's time to reveal our winner, and it is none other than that rookie in the top lane, T1's Zeus. I think we have to continue to stop down and talk about this guy because while T1 has had an up and down showing throughout this tournament and the Rumble stage, even within losses, to your point, Chronicler, he has been fairly consistent.
The most impressive part to me, and it's what always has impressed me, we have a lot of players in challenges, but also just in the LCK that are really good at taking wins, but then they overextend. LPL also has a habit of this. But Zeus plays like he has a lot of years of experience, and that is to me the most impressive part, because he doesn't. And like, how much better can this player get?
I think the other thing, too, that we will talk a bit about more later, Emily, is just kind of this change in style as well for T1 and how obviously players like Zeus play into that, but you like to see them living up to it on their first international performance because that can always be a very dangerous thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing I saw from him yesterday is like, even when Zeus was targeted with the Rumble, he was still making sure like he's clearing the wave. He's not letting them get too far ahead. So even though it was a split map situation where he was getting put behind, he still ended up having these like phenomenal equalizers later on, and it was just great to see.
I also like that you bring up the Rumble because we'd be remiss to not give a Rumble award to one of the Rumble players out here on the tournament. Now it's time to turn our attention though towards the action today, the final battle in the MSI Rumble stage with everything on the line.
我到现在这个6强，感觉就起伏比较大。
The Rumble stage has been quite the roller coaster.
저희가 이루지 못한 영광을 이루겠습니다.
我觉得在明天的比赛里面，最重要的一场肯定是我们跟EG打。
마이너 지역이라는 수식어를 거부하는 거침없는 팀 PSG.
我们为了打EG，会准备跟我们可能打赢G2那种感觉跟角色差不多。
EG 최고조에 이른 그들의 잠재력 이제 밖으로 폭발할 때입니다.
I don't really think like anyone is unbeatable. We're more confident than ever versus G2. We already beat PSG. We just do our thing, and then I think we'll be fine.
저는 PSG 선수들은 한국 분들은 죄송한데 그렇게 잘한다 생각 안 하고 그래서 그렇게 긴장되지 않네요.
G2 유럽의 제왕.
Obviously it sucks losing, but there's no time to sit down and be sad about losses.
Normally I would apologize for our performance, but I'm not gonna do that. So we're gonna show up the best G2 we've seen, and we're gonna take this MSI home.
그레이티스트 오브 올타임이 이끄는 T1.
일단 저희가 좀 플레이에 자신감 갖고 실수를 많이 안 하면서 잘하면 될 것 같습니다.
RNG한테도 패배를 한번 당했기 때문에 RNG 상대로 이겨가지고 좀 복수를 하고 싶습니다.
RNG
Clearly the best team at MSI.
我更期待在 BO5 中碰到 T1 吧，然后跟他们打出一场精彩的比赛。
서로 쫓고 쫓기는 이들 중에 최후의 승자는 누가 될까요?
It all comes down to this, the last day of the Rumble stage. And you can follow along with all the scenarios as the games happen. Head on over to @LullySportsStats on Twitter. Grab your foldy sheet so that you can stay updated on your team's chances of making it out, or rather to the knockout stage.
It's shorter than I thought.
Down to just
we
64,
had
Emily.
the LCS one where it was like taller than my entire height.
Yeah, exactly. Well, just down to 64 at this point. Let's take a look at some of our tiebreaker scenarios for the day. Out of a total possible of 3, there's a very small percentage of scenarios that actually make it to that, although I know all 3 of us here are rooting for the full 9 games.
There's only one.
There's only one?
Yeah.
That makes sense. Because it's like 1.6% of scenarios. Yeah, so one out.
Only one.
Only one.
I naturally expect us to get to that one because why not? I feel like at this point,
At least
might as well
one,
go all
right?
the
But
way.
hopefully more. Again, I think it is roughly 60% of scenarios that play at least one, if not more than that. And so we'll have to see what, of course, comes true. We'll be tracking that throughout the day. Track along with us, though. Now standing, RNG is already locked for the knockout stage, right? 7-1. The only team that's so far eliminated is going to be Saigon Buffaloes at 1-7. T-Win, 1 win away from locking EG, G2, PSG Talon, the ones who have to do a little bit more work to get it done.
And personally, for T1, there are scenarios where they don't make it, but especially with how the game against G2 yesterday, I wouldn't be too worried. But as you pointed out with your lovely monologue at the top of the day, personally, I don't know what direction it's actually going to end up going, especially with how the forms of the team have been looking, because it's a good time, like for PSG, to kind of have an upsurge, whereas G2, their journey has mostly been downwards, which is a lot harder to bounce back from.
And even in the Saigon Buffalo loss, I think PSG were playing something that they were super comfortable on. They themselves have said, like, we think, I believe it was Hanabi in an interview, but someone can correct me if I'm wrong. They said that they feel like they are a scaling team, right? Like they feel like they are ones who kind of learn and evolve and adapt. So, I mean, as someone who really loves this EG team, like putting aside NA or whatever, I am very concerned because I'm perpetually nervous.
Rightfully concerned, I think. Honestly, for any of the teams that find themselves in the position of not yet having locked. Again, I'm going to jump us back to T1, the team in the best of positions. But we do need to talk about their journey here, Chronicler, because it has been filled with ups and downs.
And I want to put it in a broader historical perspective, because in the history of Korean dominance, right, starting in 2013 and lasting till 2017, and even in the years afterwards, I'd argue, Korean teams have always been identified as, yes, they're incredibly hard workers, but they're also a little aloof, a little stoic, hard to approach, very serious, dedicated players. And there are all those things, but one of the saddest things about the, not just them having a rough time in game, at the start of this Rumble stage, that we didn't get to see that T1. And like within the LCK, one of the reasons why this team was so much fun to watch was because they're really goofy. They're really weird. They're really outspoken. And we saw the first glimpses of it yesterday with that impact, or with the interview of Owner.
Yeah, I was so happy to get that Owner interview just because he's a player I've watched, again, like evolve since he came onto the team into Worlds last year. And I mean, just eradicate that mindset completely, right? Like we're well beyond it. And this T1 team is a very fun, goofy team. So like you said, I'm super happy that we saw that.
From the team in the best of positions to the team in the toughest of positions, PSG Talon, they're going to rely heavily on the fact that they hold that head-to-head record over G2, as they are still a game behind in the overall standings. But let's talk about how they can make it. What has been working when they're pulling off wins?
I'm about to talk about Moritz's favorite player here, Bay. Because I think getting him on something, again, that he's really comfortable on, coming out of lane to contribute to these team fights. I think having Hanabi on something like the Ornn as their front line is also really, really important. And once again, we've seen multiple teams say it throughout this stage. We're going to evolve more around 5v5 team fighting in the mid to late game. And I think PSG have kind of found their comfort zone there, especially with the picks that they've been putting Bay on, like the Lissandra, Galio, and Syndra.
And it was Emily that pointed out before they started picking up wins is that Kai Wing has also had an incredible tournament. And him, Unified, and Hanabi are, of course, the remnants of the PSG of last split. And if, as Emily pointed out, like Bei and Juan can be as comfortable and not be somewhat of a liability, which they have been in the past, then I think the amount of prowess and like the cool attitude of those top and bottom players is going to be key for PSG.
I think what's interesting too, as we talk more and more about each of the teams and their best chances of making it out, we fall back on one kind of commonality, which is playing the way your team played to get here, right? It's about returning to those identities. We saw with EG. We've now seen it a bit more with T1, having that weight taken off of their shoulders after falling to that North American squad. And for PSG, go to team fighting, right? And that in turn has been the result as well of G2's downfall, maybe getting contested by certain teams in ways that they didn't expect to because of how earlier stages of the tournament had gone.
Yeah, I mean, I think G2 coming in had the absolute best drafting in this entire tournament. And now we've seen people kind of adapt and pick that up. So
we'll see if they can find that again here today as the pressure is on. Now, the PCS champions have a monumental game later today as they face off against EG in our featured matchup presented by Mercedes-Benz.
On the deciding day of the Rumble stage, the script has been thrown out the window. 3 spots are up for grabs and everything is possible. But one matchup has the potential to be the most pivotal of all. Evil Geniuses versus PSG Talent.
Baron looks like they're gonna try right now. Inspired. 2K Hell Smite is gonna go to Evil Geniuses. And I've seen this before. Evil Geniuses in the North River taking down the enemy team.
EG turned up the heat on day 4, taking down the hometown favorites T1 in a huge upset.
7-1, clearly the best team at MSI. RNG take down another.
They are now on the verge of making the knockout stage a huge win for all LCS fans. But in 2021, PSG Talon crushed the dreams of the LCS at MSI, and after the wins against G2, they are poised to repeat history.
Just gonna delete the alley.
Last time they faced off, EG came out on top, but this time the stakes are much higher.
In goes Inspire. They've got 1 so far. Juhan's next. 3 down for Danny. Tryndamere finds the 4th.
For our featured matchup powered by Mercedes-Benz, we have a battle for survival between PSG Talon and Evil Geniuses.
An absolutely massive matchup for both of these teams here looking to make it to the knockout stage. I'm just going to kind of turn and open the floor to the two of you. We've talked a little bit about what success for PSG looks like in terms of the comps we want them to secure and how we want them to play around that core and enabling Bei to get through the laning phase and into the team fight phase. What about on the side of EG? That success that they found yesterday against T1, admittedly, while at the hands of being able to steal a Baron, you don't necessarily want it to always have to come from a play like that.
Yeah, and I mean, this is something we saw, again, from EG domestically, is that their early game has some holes in it, maybe, especially against a team like T1, who still, in my opinion, has the best early game of any team at this tournament. However, for EG, it is still the same points that I've been making the entire time, which is Inspired and Vulcan working together to create plays to set up their carries for success, specifically Jojo and Danny. Putting Danny on the Jinx is something that I was looking at in draft, and I was like, I don't know about this lane. And as it turns out, that lane was not very fun for him, but he was obviously so visibly comfortable on that pick and team fights that it didn't end up mattering.
How does that interact with PSG, though, and everything that we've just talked about?
That's the hard part for me, because both these teams, I think, have kind of shifted towards a very similar style, right? Where they are relying on their bot laners to do really well. And then, personally, I think the difference maker is going to be Jojo. Like, his tweeting game is great. We've seen that from the beginning. But if you look at how this player has actually performed in terms of individual performances, his impacts on the map, he has done such an incredible job. And naturally, I'm always going to talk about the T1 boys on their, or Zeus's case on the international debut. But I think Jojo Pyun has also had an incredible tournament.
So for me, it's Vulcan, actually, because I think really highly of Kaiwing. And like we said, in their losses, he was still performing well. He still had really great engages. So I'd like to be able to see Vulcan either out-roam him on like early roam timers maybe, or be able to, counteract that, because Kaiwing initiating fights for PSG is just looking so good.
Well, we wait on bated breath for that matchup, but let's go ahead and take a look at the schedule to see what's in store for us across the entire day. We kick things off with G2 Esports versus Saigon Buffaloes before Evil Geniuses versus PSG, as we just talked about. Then we will conclude Saigon Buffaloes' run at this tournament in the third game of the day against T1. We got to talk about this squad. Glad that they're able to put up a win. Still very dangerous here on our final day of play.
Yeah, I mean, I love the fact that, first of all, we just, again, have the Vietnamese teams back, right? I know a lot of people were underestimating Saigon Buffalo because they were the second seed and they were beat out by GAM Esports, who just had their victory at Southeast Asian Games, so congratulations to them. But, Saigon Buffalo, we've seen them evolve as a team. I really like what they've been doing with mid-jungle, with Binjay covering Froggy, right? I think that's actually so important, where even if his jungle proximity or numbers didn't change in a significant way, I think the way he played around mid, that Lee Sin pick for him was so massive.
And in addition to that, I'm also happy. The larger overarching theme of this Rumble stage has been teams returning to playing the way that they like. We saw the most archetypical RNG comp yesterday, and seeing the VCS, who played the way we expected of them in the group stage. But when it came to Rumble, it really took them a couple of days to start showcasing that aggression, start showcasing that type of really high tempo, extremely aggro skill check gameplay that almost got them the wins against RNG. And I think that if those players get another year of experience and they come back next year and they play that same game, they'll win it.
And once again, shout out to Froggy, who had a really great, you just saw him hit that charm there, but really great performances out of him yesterday. And again, it really started with Binjay being like, you know what, I am going to attack mid lane. Even in that RNG matchup where they're trading 1-for-1, RNG still weren't able to, get much out of their trade kills. And Binjay and Froggy working together. Like I said before, the stats don't have a significant increase, but the value of his ganks mid and his mid lane coverage showcased in Froggy's teamfight performance. Yeah,
while he himself, in terms of goal difference at 14, was in more of a hole, the team as a whole was closer to breaking even. And that's where ultimately this team wants to be, right? Going into teamfight phase at a relatively even state. Now with the way that they're drafting and looking to play, that's their best shot at success.
And against G2, if you can get them off kills early on, that has been the best way for many teams, right? So I'm expecting Saigon to try to do that here as well and really put the pressure on them early.
Well, we already talked, right, about how Caps, especially if you isolate the beginning of the tournament, looked like the best performing player here. You start to attack him, you put in a position where he can't really be a difference maker for G2, and that just might be the answer. Now, after their win versus PSG, Lore was able to catch up with Saigon Buffalo's Shogun. So let's go ahead and hear what he had to say in the Verizon post-game interview.
We're back in Busan for the final day of the Rumble stage, and yesterday Saigon Buffalo surprised everyone, and I have Shogun with me to talk about this amazing performance. Xin chào, and thank you so much for joining me. There's been a shift in your playstyle and in the way you played yesterday, challenging RNG, beating PSG in the penultimate game. What happened there, and how would you explain this change?
Thì ngày hôm nay là mình có một cái phong độ rất là khác so với những ngày trước, là mình đã coi như là rất là gần với chiến thắng để đánh bại được RNG, và mình đã coi như là hủy diệt PSG ở trận đấu vừa rồi. Thì hôm nay team bạn đã làm những gì khác để mình có được cái kết quả tốt này?
Là team em sau hai thất bại ngày hôm qua thì bọn em đã về nói với nhau và bàn bạc lại, và bọn em chơi theo kiểu cố gắng hết sức thôi.
So I think after two close defeats yesterday, we were very upset, but we go back and we talk to each other on how we can improve, and we come into today with a mentality to try our very best.
It was an amazing performance. Congrats on this game. And this was your first international experience at MSI, being one of the youngest players here in the competition. How do you reflect on your performance, but also what you learned here in the competition?
Thì mặc dù là mình là một tuyển thủ trẻ nhưng mà mình có rất là nhiều màn trình diễn chói sáng tại giải đấu lần này ha. Thì bạn đánh giá như thế nào về màn trình diễn của cá nhân bạn tại giải đấu MSI lần này và bạn đã học được những điều gì qua cái trải nghiệm lần đầu tiên ra quốc tế này?
Em nghĩ đây là lần đầu tiên em ra quốc tế và em cảm thấy màn trình diễn của em thì nó cũng tầm trung bình thôi chứ cũng không có quá nổi trội hay là một cái gì cả. Và còn về kinh nghiệm thì em đã học được rất là nhiều về những đối thủ khác như đi với họ và những cái điều nhỏ nhặt.
So I think like as reflection on myself, I think that my performance here is just average. I think I still have a long way to go. And I think about the things that I have learned in this first international experience is that I got to meet the best players and also learn from them like how to go better on the landing phase, like the small tricks to like get myself better, the advantage in the lane.
Well, hopefully you can feel better next time we see you at international events because this is just the beginning of your journey here. Shogun, last question for you. G2 will be the next game. Can you take them down the same way you took down PSG and challenge RNG?
Thì mình sẽ đối đầu với lại G2 trong trận đấu sắp tới. Tái đấu với G2 trong trận đấu sắp tới thì bạn có tự tin là bạn sẽ hạ được G2 cũng như các bạn đã hạ được PSG trong trận đấu ngày hôm nay không?
Phong độ của G2 đang xuống rất là cao sau 4 trận vừa qua. Họ đã để thua 4 trận liên tiếp thì em nghĩ ngày mai bọn em sẽ chiến thắng được G2.
So I feel like a G2 performance has not been very well, especially when they have like a 4-lose streak. So I think we're gonna take them down tomorrow.
Looking forward to this matchup then, Shogun. Come on for this interview. Tony, thank you so much for the translation. And Dash, back to you.
Thank you so much, Floor. Now, Saigon Buffaloes are effectively eliminated from the tournament, but they can still play spoiler starting now versus G2, who are coming off of a 4-game losing streak. Never thought I was going to say that based on how they were playing early on in this tournament.
It's been shocking. It will hopefully, as Emily already lampshaded earlier, teach us to not take away too much of best of ones. And we should also not now pretend that G2 is not good anymore.
Okay.
Right? Because just as going forward doesn't make them the best team, going for a loss streak also doesn't make them the worst team. The problem is that Jankos and Caps have really been pushed down. They are not able to make as much of an impact on the map. And it's a combination of teams adapting not only to G2's draft, but also tailoring their own, like, for example, the Lee Sin Lissandra that we saw earlier, where there is so much lockdown available and the playmaking potential just isn't there.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we saw from Saigon Buffalo yesterday in terms of attacking mid-jungle is also what they have to do into Caps and Jankos today, because for me, that is, the beating heart of this G2 team. They're both such good players. They have such great coordination with each other. And while I wouldn't have categorized like G2 as an early game team, getting Caps ahead is so important for this team to get to that mid game where they really love team fighting.
I'm also going to just key into a little bit of what you were talking about in terms of the draft. It definitely felt like on the outset of this tournament that G2 was kind of defining the meta, right? Or dictating the meta of the tournament.
Absolutely.
And now they're still doing it, but in a different way, in the sense that teams are now having, or rather being forced to adapt to them and find their way to dismantle it.
Yeah, they had so many smart picks, groups, and then the beginning of Rumble. Here we see the Lissandra response and the top Ornn, the Lissandra Lee Sin to cover mid and make sure that at least is stable. And then the Tristana Rel is something that, Unified and Kaiwing have just been spamming. It's great in teamfights, allows Kaiwing that initiation with the Ornn frontline. So this is like, a classic, we're setting up Tristana to teamfight composition. And into what G2 picked, again, I'm going to say a little bit about FLICKR because I think he's a phenomenal team fighter, but his laning wouldn't be something that I'd highlighted, which is what you want out of something like a Kalista pick.
So then for G2, considering that now they're the ones who really want to find a win here, and maybe with some knowledge or expectation that teams are going to start, adapt and draft in that way against them, what's the answer for them?
Yes, stay off the Callista. You know,
Okay,
get
no
maybe
Callista.
something a little bit more comfortable because we've seen how important AD carry counterpick actually has been in this tournament, also with the blind Ezreal. And then in addition to that, get a good matchup for Caps and Jackals. Make sure that they can actually win that 2v2 mid.
All right, back to highlighting and spotlighting that mid lane matchup. It all comes down to this final day of the MSI Rumble stage. Who will make it and who will be eliminated? Dracos, Kobe, let's find out.